are being live streamed on YouTube. And so let's all be cognizant of that. My name is Khotso Mokhele, and I'm a member of the African Light Source board, and for now serving as chair, and I'll be moderating the session. When the session was initially planned, we had possibility of ministerial participation from Cameroon, Rwanda, Egypt, South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and the AU as well. I'm informed by Simon that Cornell that the minister from Benin joined the session earlier and articulated her country's position on the African Light Source in that session. I have been informed that the minister, the South African minister, Dr. Blade Nzimande, is currently in Paris at UNESCO because the Science Commission of UNESCO meets this week. This being the General Conference of UNESCO, which started last week. And we've also been informed that the Professor Adama Diawara of Cote d'Ivoire is also en route to Paris, probably going to UNESCO as well. But Professor Kobia, who is the director of the cabinet in the Ministry of Higher Education, will represent the minister in this forum. Dan Dutoy is the Deputy Director General in the Department of Science and Innovation of South Africa, who will represent Minister Blade Nzimande. In the event that we're joined by the Nigerian minister or the High Commissioner, AU High Commissioner, you will be informed. But we will kick it off with the two ministerial representations from South Africa and Cote d'Ivoire. The participants in this session would be aware of the enormous amount of work that has taken place as a bottoms-up work to develop a community that recognizes the value of the, as someone, you've raised your hand?
I just wanted to inform you in the chat, we learned that the Nigerian minister will join in 30 minutes.
Okay, so the moderator is going to have to moderate this very fluidly, and which we shall do the best we can, Simon. Thank you very much. You can lower your hand now. So a lot of work has taken place over the last 10 years plus. I recall when I was still the president of the National Research Foundation, talking to Simon and Sekazi and others about the possibility of this continent building its own African light source. And part of the inspiration for believing that a project of this nature can materialize on the African continent came out of the ability of Africa to build two major telescopes, one being the optical telescope built in Sutherland, South Africa, and the radio telescope called the optical is the Southern African Large Telescope, and the radio telescope, the Square Kilometer Array, also being built in the Karoo in South Africa. These two mega projects, SALT was a mega project at the point of its building, but SKA has come and dwarfed SALT and become a true mega project on the African continent. And even though this SALT is an instrument built in South Africa, SALT is considered as a Pan-African instrument. The SKA, on the other hand, the core of the array may be built in the Karoo in South Africa, but there's elements of the Karoo that will radiate out of South Africa into many African countries. There's already a dish in Ghana, and so it is also a mega Pan-African telescope. And Dan du Toit is here. I'm sure he can talk to us more about these two projects. So my role here is to moderate the session. The effort hitherto, as I say, has been bottom up. But now the project has advanced to the point where we now need to have conversation at the top of African politics for us, for the bottom up and the top down to ultimately start to come together. And in preparation for this session, a series of questions were sent to the ministers that we had hoped would be participating. And Dan and Professor Kobia, I hope you have seen those questions, because those will be the basis of that this conversation will be based on. And with your permission, therefore, Dan du Toit and Professor Kobia, I'm going to start with the first question. And the first question that was sent is, what is your impression of the African Light Source Project? How do you see your country contributing to or benefiting from it? How do we best engage your government, universities, private sector, and civil society to progress the African Light Source Project in your country? Dan, can I start with you?
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukele. Indeed, and it's a great privilege for me to participate and represent my minister, His Excellency Dr. Nzimande, in this afternoon's discussion. And my first task indeed is to bring to all the apologies of Minister Nzimande if he's not present here today. It's certainly not because of a lack of interest, because as was indicated as we speak, he is engaged in the intergovernmental affairs of Unesco in Paris. And why it was important for the minister, if he was free to participate, and indeed why it asked me to represent him, is because an initiative such as the African Light Source Initiative really is strategically aligned with a number of key policy priorities for the Department of Science and Innovation. First and foremost, and that is to harness scientific capabilities and to put those at the service of Africa's growth and development. But secondly, and this is where an initiative such as the African Light Source Initiative really come to the fore, and that is to bring African science together, to serve as an enabler, to serve as an integrator for deepening Pan-African, intra-African collaboration in science. And then thirdly, we, and Dr. Mukele spoke to this, really view large-scale mega science infrastructure projects as a key enabler to promote integration and cooperation in science, and to be a powerful vehicle for developed capabilities, specifically human capacities. So the perspective from the South African government, from the Department of Science and Innovation, indeed is then one of an initiative which is strategically aligned with our policy priorities. It is an initiative we have watched and continue to monitor with great interest, and we continue to really appreciate the dedication and enthusiasm of many of the champions of this initiative present on this call, who over many years now have worked away. And I think that is the important message. And Dr. Mukele was too modest and did not spoke about his own critical leadership role both with regard to the Southern African Large Telescope, as well as South Africa's eventual hosting of the Square Kilometre Array Telescope when he was the leader, the president of our National Research Foundation. So in the first instance, and what is required is for the scientific community, for the user community of these large-scale infrastructures, such as a light source, to consistently engage with government and to maintain a regular dialogue in order to make sure that our policy decisions and our funding decisions are informed so that they correspond to the needs and the priorities of our community, but also seek to strategically leverage the opportunities investment in these large-scale facilities bring around, because that is what happened now more than 20 years ago, when our astronomy community had engaged with Dr. Mukele and his leadership, such as the National Research Foundation. So in the first instance, an engagement such as we have today between policymakers, between the decision makers, and in the scientific community, the user community, is exactly what is required. Of course, it's very important that we have this discussion within an environment which is one where public funding is constrained. That is no secret, but that should not stop us from dreaming. That should not stop us from being ambitious, because I am convinced that there were many voices 20 years ago who would say that never would Africa, and of course South Africa is really hosting this for Africa, be able to host a facility such as the Square Kilometre Array. So I would also just like to encourage the group and this community to continue and to persist with its efforts. So I will conclude with those initial remarks. Thank you, Dr. Mukele.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan. Professor Kobia, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Moketse.
Professor Kobia, we only see the top of your head. So if you can tilt your screen a bit so that we can see your full. Now you see, we can now also see a very elegant regalia now.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Katso. The email about this meeting has been addressed to the Director of Higher Education, the Director General of Higher Education, who went in France with the Minister of Higher Education, as we said, for the General Assembly of UNESCO. So from there, they just told me to represent them at this meeting. They did not give me all the mail concerning that meeting to allow me to address all the questions you ask me now. So I will do it later on by writing the response for each question to what level my country, Côte d'Ivoire, will be involved in this joint conference and to this project. And I would like, first of all, to tell you that in Ivory Coast here, our Department of Physics have an equipment dedicated to that kind of research. And we have a team, an experienced team that consists of many professors and associate professor involved in such research for a long time. So we are very, very interesting to get involved in that project. And I will work with that team involved in the branch of crystallography, light source, to respond to all these questions and send back to you properly. Okay. That's what I'm going to say for the time being.
Okay, Professor Kobia. So I realize the slightly tricky position that you've been put in as a last-minute replacement, and so I certainly would not want to put you on the spot to
Yeah.
respond to questions that you may not necessarily be ready and prepared to respond
Okay.
to.
Mhm.
Can I propose, Dan, then and Professor Kobia, that as I go through the questions,
Yeah.
I will ask Dan the question,
Mhm.
and if you have anything to add after that, Professor Kobia, I will leave it up to you. But if you don't have anything to add from the point of view of your readiness, we shall then proceed with Dan.
Okay.
To the next question.
Okay.
I realize that you find yourself in a bit of a tricky situation. I think
Yeah,
it's just unfortunate and fortuitous that this conference coincides with the General Conference of Unesco,
Yeah.
and especially with the Science Commission, which actually meets this week. Dan just reminded me that last week it was the opening plenaries. And in fact,
Okay.
Dan, you may want to talk to us a little bit about the Open Science Declaration that was adopted this morning. And Dan, talk to us about that. And after that, I'll then, and just kind of share with this community what the significance of that is.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Dr. Mukele. I think today is indeed an historic day for global science, and specifically also for African science, because I'm sure as many of the esteemed colleagues on the call would be aware, that UNESCO adopted a global recommendation for open science. And what does that recommendation mean? It means we have a set of rules, a set of policy recommendations, which will really seek to assist the global scientific community to unleash the potential of open science to make a contribution to the advancement of the scientific enterprise. And why this is significant is because whilst there's discussion on open science in many international multilateral forums, of course, UNESCO is the preeminent global forum which brings the entire global community together. And I think it's very important indeed that we reflect on that recommendation for the purpose of this discussion here, because the recommendations of open science very much speak to the enterprise of large-scale research facilities such as light sources or synchrotron. Because what is open science? Of course, it's first of all a scientific enterprise which is open in the first instance, inclusive, international cooperation. And that is what is also at the heart of this initiative, where we really seek to make sure that African scientists can optimally participate in global science by enjoying access to such important facilities such as the light source. But open science is also about open access. It's about access to open access to data, access to research results. And I think these are, again, also some of the values which we have seen is underpinning the African Light Source initiative. Of course, it is a research infrastructure, and the science conducted with it is data intensive. So the principles of open data, of open science, will be also embedded very much in the Africa Light Source initiative. But perhaps most importantly, open science also means science which is open to society, science which addresses, science which corresponds to the needs of society. And that's what we've also witnessed. I didn't participate in the earlier discussions, but I'm intimately convinced is that the motivation which brings all of us together here this afternoon is also to consider how crucial contributions the light source sciences enables us to make to address the needs of our societies, whether it's in health, whether it's in food security, or other critical disciplines. So I am confident that the decision of UNESCO to adopt this recommendation on open science, and then other initiatives which are responding to that, such as the African Open Science Platform, in which Dr. Mukele is also involved in, will really help us to create an enabling environment for an initiative such as the Africa Light Source to continue to progress. Thanks, Dr. Mukele.
Dan, thank you very much. And let me just add on to what Dan has just shared, that we have an initiative, the African Open Science Platform, which initiative was the pilot of that initiative was funded by Dan and the Department of Science and Innovation of South Africa. I happen to serve as the chair of the advisory council of that African Open Science Initiative. We've just recently identified the director to run the initiative on a 5-year grant, again, coming out of the Department of Science and Innovation of South Africa. This is truly a Pan-African initiative. I am co-chairing the advisory council with Professor Ismail Serageldin, who many of you on this call would know, former vice president of the World Bank, Egyptian national, who came back from the World Bank and re-established the library in Alexandria, Egypt. And we have on the advisory council a Kenyan, Sierra Leonean, a Scotsman, and the executive director of the International Science Council, and the executive director of CoData. And Dan is absolutely correct in the sense that, you know, what that initiative speaks to is exactly what the African Light Source project and initiative speaks to as well. So Simon and the team, as soon as the director of the platform starts on the 2nd of January, I will facilitate connection between that office and this initiative. Dan, you've kind of answered the second question already, but let me phrase it in full, because the latter part of the question is what I'll be more interested in. What is the biggest science facility or project in your country? I mean, clearly the SKA is the biggest project in South Africa right now. And you may want to talk a little bit about what that is. What is its annual budget? How is it managed? That is it government run? It's run via public-private partnership, or is it university-based? If you can just talk to us, Dan, about the SKA, its budget, its governance structure, and because it's a very complex governance arrangement that you've worked very, very hard to bring together, and you're absolutely the perfect person. Even if the minister was on this call, I'm sure the minister will call upon you to answer this question.
Well, thanks for that kind introduction, and Dr. Mokele. So indeed, the single biggest scientific infrastructure project in South Africa is, well, it's actually not the Square Kilometre Array. Technically, it's the Meerkat telescope. The Meerkat telescope, which is an official precursor for the Square Kilometre Array. And the Square Kilometre Array is really the ambition or the plans to build the world's largest radio telescope. South Africa, our National Research Foundation, again under the leadership of Dr. Mokele and our South African government, decided several years ago that in anticipation of the construction of the Square Kilometre Array, to learn valuable lessons, science lessons and engineering lessons, but also really to demonstrate Africa's capability, that we will build the Meerkat telescope. And I should say very proudly African, that the Meerkat telescope is currently the most powerful instrument of its kind in that specific scientific category, and is already delivering world-class scientific results, which is making headline news in the international scientific community. Meerkat, at this very moment, is a national facility. So it's a national research infrastructure forming part of the facilities administered by our National Research Foundation. So indeed, it is fully funded by the South African government. In a few years from now, the Meerkat telescope will be incorporated as part of the Square Kilometre Array, the Global Radio Telescope. Now, earlier this year, a landmark decision was taken when the Council of the International SKA Observatory, which is the intergovernmental organization which is governing the construction and operation of the SKA, telescope made the decision to proceed with the construction of the SKA proper. So the SKA is now in practice. The construction work has started. Of course, I should say that this construction work builds on a decade, if not more, work of preparatory work, including an intricate design phase. And I notice with, we're happy to see on the call, for example, we have John Wormersley, for many years a science leader at the Science Technology Facilities Council in the UK, and was actually the chair of the SKA board, because before the SKA became an intergovernmental organization, an international organization, we were a company incorporated in the UK, which was tasked with overseeing the design phase of the SKA project. And before that, it was really, there was different governance structures which brought together the scientific community, because this comes from the scientists. And I think that's perhaps a lesson for the African Light Source Initiative to progress through these phases, where you have a governance structure which is first and foremost resides in the scientific community, because that's what we had. We had a type of SKA science community. Then it progressed towards bringing the funders, the research funders together, the likes of the National Research Foundation, the STFC and others, who then created this company. But then when we came to the big decision to build a project whose construction budget will run into billions of euros, and then with enormous annual operational budgets of hundreds of millions of euros, because these are data intensive projects, these are energy intensive projects, we needed the firm intergovernmental commitment. And that's why the international intergovernmental organization was created. And there are also some technical reasons which we can discuss at another stage, such as, for example, it was very important for this large scale construction needed that we were able to design our own procurement policy, and we're not governed by any national legislation. So that's why the decision was taken to have the intergovernmental route. So very much the square kilometer array will be similar to what many colleagues on the call will know, the governance structure of CERN. It's on the IGO model. It has elements of what some colleagues will know from the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, but a large-scale project such as this kind really needs, ultimately, when it comes, not only the construction, but as all of those with experience of these large-scale facilities will know, it's the long-term commitment to the operational costs, which is the even bigger budget item, that you need to have a treaty, you need to have a convention which commits governments to those investments. So that is the trajectory of the governance debate. And I think what, from our perspective, we are here currently with very dynamic engagement from the scientific community, the user community, African scientists, the international partners. The next step, I would think, would be to start engaging with the research funders, so that we start step by step formalizing the engagement, because that's what we did with the SKA. We went from committees, we went from legally non-binding, non-for-profit associations, then set up the company, and today we have the intergovernmental organization. Because the day we progress towards that actual construction of such a facility, of course, then you need the strong commitment from governments involved. And again, something I said earlier, which I think is very important for projects of this kind, is to remain committed. It is a long-term initiative. The SKA governance, which led us from where we are today, is easily it's a two-decade process. So it has to be, to conclude before I speak too much, always has to be, and I see John's hand is up, and he may want to add to that, Dr. Mukele. I would recommend that, is that it always has to be a government which draw an initiative, a governance structure which is firmly rooted in the science, draws on the best scientific advice possible. That's why even now, when we have an intergovernmental organization, on our governance structure, we have one government official and one eminent scientist from the country concerned, scientific advisory committees. But then to proceed to construction and operation, you need to have the formal commitment of the governments involved. So let me perhaps stop here, and perhaps John may also want to contribute.
John Wormersley, comment, please.
Hi, thank you, and thanks also for the opportunity, and thanks to Dan for inviting me. So yeah, I think you have laid out a very wise approach there, Dan, because it's based on something that we know has worked in the past, and that's always a good place to start. began SKA as a scientific initiative, but in fact, it encompassed many different scientific visions. And there were different scientists with different ideas, different levels of ambition. Nobody quite knew what it would cost, and nobody quite knew if it was achievable. So it was necessary, as Dan said, to organize some sort of design effort. And it was also necessary at the same time to set up what we called a funding agencies committee, which is the thing that could eventually evolve into a governance structure. But at the beginning, it was very much to have the sort of discussion that you are having today about judging the potential interest from each country, from the national research foundations, from the scientific ministries in the cases where that was relevant. And just to start a conversation, because we knew a conversation would take many years before it became firm financial commitments. But it would also take several years to design the project. And to do these things in parallel is essential. You need to understand the scientific needs from the bottom up, but also the funding and political realities from the top down. In particular, there are choices about the beam energy of a synchrotron. There are choices about instrumentation. There are choices about the how innovative you wish to be, which could have a big impact. It would be very tempting to build a facility that is the best in the world, but it might be very expensive. And these kind of judgments need to be thrashed out. It also makes it possible to become a family, to learn to work with each other, for the scientists to work with the funders, for the funders to work with the scientists, and to develop a common approach to taking the project forward. But it does require some funding, and the design phase needed to be supported, of course, a level much less than the construction. But to do a proper engineering design required that the funding agencies find a little bit of money, and the European Commission was also very helpful with this in the case of SKA with preparatory phase funding. So I think that's a very good approach, and it led in the case of SKA to a decision to go ahead with a full international treaty. But of course, that's a pretty slow process, and you can't get 7 countries into a room and tell them to sign a treaty until they have a very clear idea of what they are going to build, where it will be located, how much it will cost, and what scientific what science it will deliver, and the scientific and industrial relevance of that research. So I think for SKA, that process, I think for a light source, one could imagine moving faster technically, because many of these facilities already exist in the world. But I am not sure you can move faster politically. So so now is the time to start those discussions with the funders and to start the sort of structures that Dan has helpfully described. Thank you.
So John, thank you very much. And in fact, before I ask Professor Kobea if he has anything to add, let me also share this little bit of detail, John, that was it 2 years ago, when we assembled the Jodrell Bank, and Dan has just said that the governing council of the SKA has just given the green light for the telescope to be built. 2 years ago, when we assembled the Jodrell Bank, we are assembling 25 years since the SKA conversation started. So this decision taking now to actually build the telescope, incorporating the Meerkat telescope that is in South Africa and the technology that's in the Meerkat, gets taken 27 years after the initial conversations took place. I mean, that kind of speaks to the scale of a bottoms-up project that ultimately became top-down, and the two came together.
Yeah, but one shouldn't get too depressed by that, because I think it's more like 10 years since the first meeting with government representatives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the timescale is not rapid, but it's within the career of those of us sitting around this table, I hope, at least within the remaining
Thanks,
career.
John. Professor Kobea, any comment from you? You're muted, sir. You're still muted. I think I was told that I can unmute you, I think.
So His Excellency from Nigeria is just tuned in to the call, to the session.
I've just noticed that.
And also,
Professor
Amadou
Kobia,
Wage's hand was up for quite a while. I see it's down again, but you may like to ask him. He's the president of the African Physics Society.
Lawrence, can you unmute Professor Kobia? I think he's been trying to talk and...
I'm trying to, he needs to unmute himself there.
We can send him a message to unmute, but we can't actually unmute him. I have been messaging him.
But let's cut
Okay,
to
Professor Kobia,
Minister Onu.
let me take this opportunity to welcome His Excellency, the Minister from Nigeria, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu. We were sensitized, Dr. Onu, that you'll join us a bit late, and we are happy to welcome you to this forum. We had already kick-started with Dr. Onu. Can you unmute yourself so that can you? I think you unmuted, sir.
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you very much. We had already started, and perhaps of the questions that were sent to all the ministers that we had hoped to participate, but I can see from your body language that you may not have received the questions.
Yeah, it's just let us know where the question.
But let's ignore the questions, Honorable Minister. Let me throw this second question at you. What is the biggest science facility in your country? What is its annual budget, and how is it managed? Is it government run? Is it run via public-private partnership, or is it university-based?
I must thank you so much, and I need to commend this effort, because Africa must pay attention and make sure that we deploy science, technology, and innovation to nation building, because all through history, no nation has ever become truly great without deploying science, technology, and innovation. So we have all the resources. We also have a very young population. We are very lucky indeed. We have water, we have very good weather. So there is nothing else except that will. And that's why I was very happy about this. And in Nigeria, for science, the public sector is making contributions. The private sector is also making contributions. And our universities in the area of research and innovation. As a matter of fact, in March of this year, the President Muhammadu Buhari, he actually allocated 0.5% of the gross domestic product of Nigeria to the science, technology, and innovation ecosystem. So we have a structure in Nigeria where the public sector, particularly the federal government, also some state government, own research institutes, research agencies doing research in virtually all areas. But the Federal Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, we coordinate research and innovation in the country.
In fact, your response, Honorable Minister, has taken us to another question that maybe I should swing that question through to Dan. In your case, you say the federal government has just committed 0.5% of GDP.
No, 0.5%, yes.
Yeah, 0.5% of GDP to science and innovation. Dan, let me swing this question to you and to Professor Kobia, because this is the one that Professor Kobia can respond to.
Yeah.
Africa has been talking for many years about getting to the 1% of GDP dedicated to science. Firstly, where is your country done with regards to this 1% journey? And the second part of that question is, what do you believe is the hindrance of getting many African countries getting to that 1%? Dan, Professor Kobia, and followed by Professor Kobia.
Thank you, Professor Mokete.
Professor Kobia, let's start with Dan, and then we'll come to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to answer, is that?
Okay, let's start with you then, Dr. Onu, and then we'll go to Dan, and we'll go to Professor Kobia.
No, I think it's very important. The African Union Executive Council in 2006 took that decision. And this 15 years ago, I think all African countries should really allocate a minimum of 1%, to GDP. Because if you look at the European Union, just imagine, just about 5 years ago, European Union requested all European countries to allocate 3%, to dedicate 3% of their GDP. And many European countries have done so, 3%. And so we know that the difference between the developed countries and the developing countries is mainly paying attention to science, technology, and innovation. So I don't think I know that our economies, the private sector is not as developed as it should be. And there are so many challenges in terms of infrastructure and all that. But all African countries should try and make that sacrifice, because this is one way we can move many of our people out of poverty. China just announced that they have defeated extreme poverty, and Africa should be able to do so. And there is no other way except if we can ensure that we fund adequately, research and innovation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Dan?
Thank you, and it's an honor to continue on that intervention by the Honorable Minister. Now, first and foremost, where is South Africa? We're currently just below 0.8% of our GDP. We've had an objective for many years to achieve 1%, and in fact, some of our policy documents speak about an aspirational objective of 1.5%. The challenge has been that even though the government, even despite difficult economic circumstances, has been able to at least maintain our investment from public resources, there has been a decrease in investment from the private sector. And that is absolutely crucial. This is not a mission, an objective which can be achieved by governments alone, but governments have to work hand in hand with the private sector and create an enabling environment for private sector also to invest in R&D. And that has been a real challenge in the South African economy during difficult times, that we have seen that our investment from private sector did not match the investment which has come from government. And of course, there are reasons. I've already alluded to this, the difficult economic challenges, the fact that governments have many other policy priorities, which at first glance, and I emphasize the words first glance, could seem more pressing, could seem more urgent. So what is really important is to maintain this long-term strategic perspective, the long-term commitment, which is not aligned with cycles of administrations or electoral cycles, but really gets embedded in the long-term government planning framework. Because if you do that, that's when you see the results. We spoke earlier about a success story, which is South Africa's involvement in the Square Kilometre Array. And one of the reasons we were able to achieve those successes because our government has remained firmly committed to that objective. We've had several ministers of science and technology during the lifespan of this project who have always just continued building on the work. So the long-term commitment is absolutely essential. And then a vibrant policy dialogue within government on the role science and innovation should play in society. And it's very important that this is not a discussion like the ones we're having this afternoon amongst those who are converted, because we are preaching to ourselves, but it's that real engagement at the highest level of government with the ministers of finance, who are responsible for the budget decisions, and then really convincing the ministries with the other budgets. And that's what we see in South Africa really as our key role, is that it's our ministers, our sister ministries responsible for agriculture, for health, for energy, for trade and industry, which have far bigger budgets than we will ever have. And then we're not complaining about, but convincing them of the importance of investing in their portfolio, in research, in science and innovation, so that science and innovation is really mainstream as an instrument for growth and development. And if we do not do that, we will not achieve the lofty ideals we set for ourselves. So it also calls upon us in the scientific community to be outside of our comfort zone and to agitate and to convince others. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Professor Kobia?
Yeah.
Yes, so
I was saying that it's an opportunity for us to get involved in this open initiative platform, African Light Source. But in our country, the research is entirely run by the government. Yeah. And with the university-based funds and some independent centers, depending on the Ministry of Higher Education. But all of these are funded by government. Yeah. What we are doing now is to interact with the private sector, to get funds from them and to try to make this sector more dynamic. So what we are doing is that we create what we call Africa Center of Excellence in mining, geology, waste processing, climate change, which is funded by private sector, international private sector, and which work well. We have these centers since 2 or 3 years, and the result is really interesting. But the GDP of what you are speaking, yes, we know our parliament members are aware of this goal of 1% of our GDP, but actually the real level is 0.35. Yeah. And when we present our budget at the parliament, they are aware of that. They said that, but the research is not funded enough. But we say, but we said the government to get to the goal of 1% of African Union said, but unfortunately we are actually on this level, which is 0.35. Meanwhile, the government makes some effort. Recently, we get some facility which is very interesting. We have the computer, which is the first powerful in sub-Saharan Africa after that of South Africa. And we are looking for a financial model so that we can interact, utilize this center with the private sector, and they are very, very, very interesting in it. But we are making the financial model to get together and utilize this computer. Meanwhile, in the university, in some agricultural center and funded by the government or mixed funded private and the government. But to boost our research sector, we create this center of excellence, which by the time, but actually, presently is working well. So we are aware that the 0.35 is not enough, and we are looking to conduct our research in direction of the private sector. We want to know their need, and so that we can interact with the projects, the project that interests them, so that our research can be directed to the socio-economic world and get that funds. And we are revising our law to allow the university and center to interact with the private sector so that they can receive funds from this sector and make product that can be sold and get some fund from this sector, because presently all these departments are run by government, but they are not allowed to take money from the private sector. So we are revising our law on research, on education, so that university, high school can interact with the private sector.
Thank you,
Professor.
Thank you, Professor Kobia.
Yeah.
I need to move on to the next question now.
Yeah.
And this next question is designed to establish the extent to which the African Light Source Project is visible and alive in your countries. The 32nd ordinary session of the African Union Executive Council recently called upon member states to support the Pan-African Synchrotron Initiative, which is a term synonymous with the African Light Source. My first question, let me start with Honorable Minister Onu as well. To what extent are you aware of this call from the AU? And to what extent do you believe you may support placing the African Light Source Project in the STI strategy for Africa and Agenda 2063 as a flagship project?
No,
Okay, thank you, Professor Mokele. As
Professor
I said
Kobia,
at the beginning.
Professor Kobia, just hold on. Just hold on. This is Dr. Onu first, and then I'll come to you later.
Okay, no, I make it very brief. I think it's very important that two things that are very critical for us in Africa, because many of us, I think most Africans feel so unhappy each time we see Africans trying to run away from Africa to go to Europe. Many of them die crossing the Mediterranean Sea. We feel very, very unhappy because it shouldn't happen. You know, the resources we have in Africa, if we utilize them, the rest of the world will be coming here. And as a matter of fact, all parts of the world that have developed have done so using resources, from Africa. And why can't we use the same resources, to develop our own nations, so that we will no longer be the face of hunger? Because normally, if you want to show the face of hunger in the world today, you need to bring an African face. or the face of crisis and so on. All this shouldn't be there. Our standard of living should be far higher than what it is. I will understand what happened in the past, but we can't live in the past. We have a bright future. We should move there. So basically, the point I'm making is that we cannot, African countries must work together. It is very important. When we share knowledge, when we come together, we will share knowledge. And by working together, we will learn from one another. And then we will not duplicate efforts. We can, South Africa can learn something from Nigeria. Nigeria can learn something from Ethiopia. Ethiopia can learn from Ghana. So that way, our march to development will be faster. And it will be something that, the same sort of thing that happens in Asia with the rise of Japan. Japan developing immediately after the Second World War, and its impact, being felt everywhere. We now have so many Asian tigers and so on. So no technology. The second thing is that no technology we should not, as a continent, deny ourselves participating in any technology. We must get involved. We must, and I tell people, I say, when, the oceans were being navigated and the ends of the world determined and so on, Africans didn't do much. Though we were, for example, Benin at that time, the Portuguese who came to Benin found out that Benin was so developed, their roads wider than the roads you could find in Portugal. But all those things didn't mean much, because we did not participate. So we must ensure that no technology, I just want to make a general comment. Yeah. No technology should be, beyond us. We must involve ourselves, the emerging technologies, the old ones, our march, this fourth wave, technological wave, we must come in and make sure that we participate fully and, understand what is going on and take over. It's possible and it should be done.
So, Dr. Onu, can I conclude from listening to you that Nigeria would be willing to champion the inclusion of an African light source into Agenda 2063 as a flagship project?
Yes. And okay. We're doing a lot. We're doing a lot in so many other areas.
Thank you very much. Professor Kobia, that's the question that I want an answer from you too. Are you aware of this decision by the AU executive, and is Cote d'Ivoire prepared to champion placing a light source project into Agenda 2063?
Okay, as I said at the beginning, our director of research, which is on mission now, was involved in that project. So he knows very well the background of this project, and as he's not there, he told me to join the meeting. But what I said is that anyway, it seems to me that as an opportunity to get involved in African platform, African light source platform, because we speak of African funding capacity, which is not enough to get individual facility. So getting such platform is an opportunity for the mutualization of our funds and capacity, and to go ahead. So for me, we are preparing to join this African light source, when my team will be back, we'll discuss and find the way to get involved intensively in the constitution of this African light source. But anyway, it's an opportunity for us, but because we are very, very, very aware that our general funds and the fund dedicated to research will not be sufficient to build something in for our whole country. And you know, research has no frontier. So for the first time, if African can cooperate, be together, we cannot do otherwise that joining this platform, and we're preparing, as you said, for the year to come to be actively involved in this African light source.
Thank you very much. Dan,
Yeah.
Same question to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukele. Of course, yeah, indeed, South Africa is very much aware of this decision. And I think the point I wanted to emphasize that this is already a decision which dates back to January 2018. So it's almost 4 years ago. Yeah. So what we would be more interested in from a South African perspective, rather than just broadly speaking about support, is to very practically, very concretely discuss with partner governments, but as well, of course, the scientific community. So how do we put this support in practice within a framework, within a plan which corresponds to the needs of the African scientific community? I think one should, it's of course, it's important from an ambition, from a mobilization perspective, to use words such as flagships, but I think very importantly is actually to start, as we discussed earlier, step by step, build this initiative, and we would be open to discuss with all partners on how to take this forward. Thank you.
I'm looking at the clock. We have 30 minutes left in this session. I'm going to ask you the last question and then open it up for participants in this session to either ask you questions or make whatever comments they choose to make. When one looks at the two major projects that South Africa has spearheaded, the optical and radio telescope projects, these large pieces of equipment are dedicated to either optical astronomy and radio astronomy. We here in South Africa, we have a particle physics facility that's also managed by the National Research Foundation, which can do either both particle physics or the application of those particles in activities that go beyond just physics, radiobiology and cancer therapy and so forth. The beauty of a light source is its versatility in answering very specific questions in health, in agriculture, in sustainability, in the environment, and so forth. And the COVID pandemic that has shaken the whole of humanity at its roots has reflected the importance of structural biology as an area that a light source facility can make fundamental contributions to. And so my question to the three of you is, how does the evolving response to current and future pandemics, how should it shape Africa's policy in respect of the African light source? If you understand what the light source facility can do, but you know, how do you envisage it shaping Africa's policy to respond to having its own light source facility to enable Africa to respond to these pandemics and other crises? Dan, let me start with you before I go to Dr. Onu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukele. I think one of the lessons we have learned, or what we have seen in the South African scientific response to COVID-19, has been just how it has emphasized absolutely the critical importance of long-term investment in research infrastructure. Because during the pandemic, as we sought to mobilize the South African scientific community to respond to COVID-19, we were able to draw on a number of strategic capabilities developed through research infrastructure, such as, for example, our Center for High Performance Computing, which was critical for all the big data modeling and analysis required to inform government's policies responding to COVID-19. Similarly, the extensive networks to conduct social surveys, which has been established, was very important in order to develop an understanding of the South African public's response and understanding of COVID-19, or perhaps just to use the example of the square kilometer array of what we have spoken about, when our government at very short notice had to develop our own ventilator manufacturing program, we turned to where we could find the best engineers in the country, and the best engineers were those who were actually responsible for the Meerkat and the square kilometer array radio telescope, and they were responsible for the national ventilator program. So these are all examples about how these investments, either directly, and you mentioned the example of structural biology, or indirectly through building generic advanced scientific and engineering skills, are important to prepare Africa for the future pandemic, or indeed for other global challenges, such as those related to the climate crisis, such as those related to food security, to which us as a continent has to respond to. So we have absolutely no doubt that investment in structural biology are one of the key disciplines. It's prioritized as part of the South Africa's new decadal plan, and in order to optimally draw on the capabilities of that discipline, we need access either to global research infrastructures, or preferably access to Africa's own infrastructures, such as a light source. So for me, whether it's a pandemic or other global challenges, these are the type of investments we as a continent certainly need to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister?
Yes, I really thank you. I had wanted to mention to you that I thought I would spend just 30 minutes, with this because of other engagements. But I'm very happy, exceptionally happy for what I am seeing, this level of cooperation between African nations. I think this is something that we must encourage. It's important that it's done at the political level and also within the scientific community, because it will really accelerate the pace of development. Yes, just about 100 years ago, slightly 100 plus, we had a pandemic, and now it repeated itself slightly after about 100 years. So we must prepare for the next one. It must come. It may not be in our own lifetime, but we have to prepare for future generations. And the way Africa was found at this period is something that is not very satisfying to us, because, as of today, we still have to rely on others to give us vaccine. And we're talking about vaccine nationalism, and so that shouldn't be where we should be. We should be able to produce our own vaccines about the same time that others did. Yes, the head start may be different and all that, but just like it's been mentioned with South Africa, yes, you have to have long-term investment, in order to achieve this. And it can't, your research must be both basic and applied, because we have to be looking, like I said earlier, we're just trying to talk generally, we cannot be left behind in any area of science and the technology. We're saying that biology is going to play a very vital role, more role than it played in the past in this century, and perhaps even beyond. We know the role that physics played with the atomic bomb and all those and so on. So biology is going to play a very, very important role. So this light source is important. And other emerging technologies, we must embrace them. We must build up the capacity, within Africa. Africa should be ready to start solving African problems by themselves. We have some of the brightest people who are African, who are in, research centers, universities in so many countries of the world. We're also in Nigeria. We're trying to bring them home, so that they can participate in making sure that we're ready, because there are so many problems to be solved. Take, for example, Nigeria with over 200 million people. We have to feed that large number. We have to clothe them. We have to house them. We have to make sure that they go to school. We have to make sure that, when they're sick, we look after them. So, these are challenges that must be met, and we must secure ourselves. So the key thing that Africa should know is that, the time has come for Africans to try to solve their problems themselves. Yes, we can always get support from our friends and partners, outside Africa, but we must have the capacity, to be in a position to solve many of the problems that are there. And the pandemic, yes, this pandemic, science is still studying it, and we can see the spike that we're getting in Europe, the shutdowns, even in China and many European countries. So it is still, science doesn't yet have a firm grip, though there is improvement, but the firm grip is not there. But definitely, if we had a pandemic about 100 years ago, it is only wise for us to think and know that there will definitely be another one in future. Thank you so much.
Minister, so did I understand you correctly? Are you going to be leaving us now?
Yes, I have to, because I have other engagements. I would have loved to stay longer,
Before you go, Minister, then let me perhaps make the statement to you that those of us who are championing this continent having its own light source are motivated by exactly what you've just said now. We're motivated by the fact that, yes, this continent has to continue to be part of the global commons, but it must also, not just for the purpose of solving its own problems internally of the continent, but it must also be a useful contributor to the global commons.
Oh, yes.
This continent has for far too long been the consumer of knowledge generated by others to solve its own problems, and not even having enough human capacity to consume that which is generated by others. And an African Light Source Facility, Minister, is a very versatile project, as you and Dan have indicated, that can be relevant to the structural biology that's required for vaccine development, that can be important for food security projects, that can be important for sustainability projects, and there's a whole host of projects that are at front and center of African challenges, that a facility like this with its versatility will be a frontline facility to help the continent address. And my last statement to you, Minister, before you go, the European Union and the European community that decided on 3% of GDP going to science, or Japan post-World War II, those nations, Minister, made choices. They made choices against many competing priorities and chose to prioritize investment in research, development, and innovation. This continent continues to resist making the choice to prioritize research, development, science and technology and innovation. And that's the culture on this continent that needs to change. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah,
we are delighted that you could join us, and you'll hear from us in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Oh, I'm bye.
Professor Kobia, your turn, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mukele. But as you said, we need some this light to source community to make pressure to our local governments and to make them aware that research, as you said, is a choice. A country like Israel, a country like South Korea, a country like Japan make the choice to dedicate their GDP around, let's say, but a consistent part of the GDP to research. And the result is there. We can see South Korea, we can see Japan, we can see Israel. We could do as this country. That's why an African light source, it's an African community to build our capacity, and it can be an instrument to a facility to make pressure to our government globally to make them aware that we have to push ahead our GDP in the research. Because if we are individual department of research of ministry, it's not enough to make this pressure. That's why I take this as an opportunity to be together and have a weight to make pressure to our local government, and our involvement in such a community like African Light Source is a real opportunity to make, because we have a capacity to make research like this country. The challenge of COVID-19, individually taken, African can do nothing, but together we can face the challenge. Many predictors said that Africans should be devastated, but it's not there. And we must understand why the people things work like that. And if we have such a community, it will be nice for us, an opportunity to make pressure to our local government and go ahead with our GDP in research. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you, Professor Kobia. A country that I would add to that list of countries that you've spoken about is Cuba, which is otherwise a very poor country, but that has always understood and appreciated that at the front line of its development agenda is science and technology and innovation, is research and development, and prioritizing under incredibly difficult political and economic circumstances at times. And knowing that the more difficult those problems are, the more reliant they would be on research, development, and innovation. Thank you very much to Dan, Minister Onu, and Professor Kobia. We have 15 minutes left. Let me open it up to, you've been quietly listening to these three gentlemen. Any comments or questions from any of the participants? Please raise your hand. Hopefully we shall be able to see who's raised their hands and call on you.
Okay.
I just want to put your attention to Prof. Amadou Wage. He's had his hand up.
Over to you, Professor Wage.
Can I speak?
Yes, you can speak, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to apologize. You know, this morning I was not able to join the opening ceremony where I was supposed to deliver a speech for 5 minutes. I am really sorry for that, because as a president of African Physical Society, which is one of the organizers of this joint conference between African Light Source, between Pan-African Crystallography Association, and also between our African Physical Society. It was really very sad for me not to be able to be connected by the Zoom. It was, I think, some technical problem, not internet problem, but just I don't know what happened. But after I was obliged to make a new registration to Zoom so that I was able to join now. So thank you very much. And I just took the train in March, and I was very, very impressed by what I have just listened. The Minister of Science from Nigeria, the representative from Ivory Coast, and the others, and yourself, and also the representative from South Africa. And I am happy to hear that the Minister of Nigeria says they want to join the project of African Light Source. And I am very happy also to know that people now are aware that synchrotron light source is very important for the development of Africa. For the too many applications in physical science, in medical science, in industry, in et cetera, in material science, even in fundamental research. So this sounds very well, and I hope that this will continue, because I remember I was in 2003 in Johannesburg for the African Ministerial Forum on Science and Technology. And at this time, the African Laser Center was supported by this ministerial conference as a flagship program of NEPAD. And there was a promise that every country, that all the African countries together can give about $20 million per year for this project, so that all the nodal in Africa will have hard infrastructure in laser technology and laser application. But okay, working today, it is only South Africa give a contribution to this project. But we are still hoping that the other country also can join. So and I really hope that concerning the African light source, because we are now in 2021, many things have changed. And now all the nations are now, all the politicians, all the governments are really aware of the importance of science and technology. The COVID-19 pandemic shows that without science, without technology, the humanity will disappear. So I think that the African government also, the African politicians are all aware of that, and that they will really contribute for the development of this project of African Light Source, and that before, I am not going to say 2063, this is very, very far. I hope that before 2030, maybe we'll start to build our African synchrotron light source. Okay, this is what I want to say, and thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thanks, Amadou. Any other comments or question to the two panelists?
I wonder if I can make a brief comment, please, Otto.
Okay, Simon, over to you, sir.
I just want to make an observation that we did have 3 ministers here, and we were not successful to have more. At times there were more. And my observation also is that the Ghana vice president was also due to reiterate the stance of the president of Ghana, that Ghana also committed itself to champion the African light source. So would like to thereby include it almost in the minutes or recording here. There have been continual conversations with the Ghanaian Science Ministry, and this dated since the conference in 2019, which was held in Ghana, and also Ghana did come to the conference in 2020. I think, as Khotso mentioned, it's very difficult for ministers to have solid diaries. I fully understand that. But I do want to say we've had a similar sentiment from the Ghanaians, and this morning also from Benin. And Benin have actually made Semi-City as a regional science center. And also there are many African countries where we experience things like this. In Rwanda, there's also a regional African science center. And now we also find from Botswana and so on, I'm sure many more. And I think it could be so helpful if the ministers present here and people with access to this top-down conversation, as Khotso has mentioned, I think this has been very important for the top-down conversation. And I really believe there's almost like a wind blowing through Africa to echo the words that we heard from the Nigerian minister. I'm sure we'll hear similar from the South African minister if we could, but definitely where Africa wants to use science, technology, innovation to drive a socio-economic transformation and generate wealth and be able to really realize this vision. All the points I heard, I absolutely like that we are a young continent. We will soon be the most populous continent, and these are all of our strengths. And last thing, I don't want to take up too much time, but I also heard the words from the Benin minister that also the African Union Commissioner said is leave no country in Africa behind. I think it's very, very important that the light source is not winner takes all, but we have an improvement of human capacity building everywhere, and also that we have many light sources, smaller scale facilities, such as we've heard in this discussion in very, very many countries in Africa, so that we really have solidly leave no country behind as we progress towards the light source.
Thank you, Simon. I'm going to take two more comments and then we'll close this one. Kenneth Evans Lutterot, if I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah, you are. It's good to see you again. My question is a little tiny bit of background. So it's very clear as day that improving the investments in science and technology and the light source constitutes such an investment that it improves society. And as was mentioned in this session, South Korea, China, and I think you also mentioned Cuba. All this leads to a better society. So the question is, how can we communicate this message more clearly to the political class? Yes, it's true, they seem to be waking up to this issue, but I'm not sure we're making the best arguments. So that's my question to everyone.
Okay, let's take that question, and as we digesting it, and the last comments, I'm very conscious of pronunciations. Alwase Ogweno.
Okay, good. It's evening here. Good evening, everyone. I'm joining from Mombasa, Kenya. I heard Dr. Mukele talking about how developed countries have improved in terms of investing their GDP into the research, a substantial amount. However, we in Africa and our African countries are still pulling their legs in terms of embracing such kind of intervention, in terms of building up on research and also ensuring that development from that aspect continues. It's very perturbing that not even a great pandemic as COVID-19 can move them that fast. So we hope that things will change, yes, because of what we've observed and what we've experienced. However, it might not move that fast. It was my comment or maybe suggestion that the panelists who are composed of ministers from different countries here may intervene in a small way for a start by lobbying the governments that are already signing into the African light source, just in case they can accommodate other researchers, because from other countries we have people who are interested in research, but they cannot mobilize funds at the level of a nation. That is, if their governments have not embraced joining or supporting such kind of joint ventures, so that such people can be given access in terms of research and being able to access such facilities to just enhance. Maybe in the long run, their governments will also embrace and then put in some funds in order to Africa to come together in terms of research. That's my small suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Malik, I see your hand, but I'm not going to recognize you, unfortunately, because I'm mindful of time. I just want to give Dan and Professor Kobia an opportunity to make last-minute closing comments. But in your closing comments, address the question that Kenneth asks. How can we make a convincing case for African politics to recognize the light source as a crucial instrument for African development? Professor Kobia, let's start with you.
We also, in all the meeting with our parliament member, we make them aware that our GDP and we have some capacity to make research and a good research, but we need a fund. And they said they are aware of that, but they are not, they can push the government to go further. That's why our commitment in the African light source will be an opportunity, because if we are together, it will create a lobby to understand our government that we are interested to have the same capacity of a European, as an Asian, as American. But we need your involvement with funding, with everything, to realize the same thing as this developing country. So for me, we have to build this community, which will be an instrument of lobbying and to make our local community understood by our government to push this GDP a bit further, to build a real capacity and to make our development. That's why I would like to say.
Thank you. Dan, closing comments from you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Just in terms of the communication, again, what we have said before, this should be an ongoing effort. It should always be focused on the societal challenges, the economic challenges we seek to respond to through science and innovation. But I think it's also important for this community to really highlight to the policy and decision makers the enormous potential this initiative had for really practically reinforcing Pan-African cooperation, Pan-African integration. We know that we speak a lot about Pan-African cooperation, but if we look at the patterns of scientific collaboration, most of it is still north-south on our own continent. So we need programs, we need platforms to really meaningful develop Pan-African programs, which also serves as catalysts for human capital development. So it's really this sort of holistic vision a vehicle which can advance the Africa science agenda. And I think then just most importantly is to really to remain committed and not to be discouraged. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to
But
thank.
before, can I just tell you, we have the AU just come in here. Is Her Excellency the Commissioner of ESTI just joined?
So
Sorry.
give me guidance now. What should I do now, Simon?
I think maybe she could have a few minutes. I'm not sure, or you are the chair, so you should do it. But I just want you to be aware that Her Excellency, the AU Commissioner, has just come in.
Okay, Your Excellency, Dr. Sarah Agbo.
Yes, sir.
I can see you.
I'm so sorry. I've been trying to log in, but it's like I'm not an Android girl.
Okay. You've just missed a very lively session. And we heard from the Nigerian Minister, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu, who unfortunately had to leave us a few minutes ago. The Minister from South Africa, Dr. Blade Nzimande, is currently at UNESCO, and so is the Minister from Cote d'Ivoire, with the Science Commission at UNESCO starting this morning. And so, but they had representatives who were on this call, and and we're just about to close because the session was scheduled to close at 7. But I'm happy to give you 5-10 minutes to hear high-level thoughts from you on how the AU Commission sees this African Light Source project.
Thank you very much, sir. I stand on existing protocols. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen and excellencies. It is a great pleasure for me to join you in this third African Light Source Conference to discuss and collectively explore ways on how to realize such a far-reaching and ambitious initiative, which is important for the development of science, technology, and innovation in Africa, which is the mandate of my department, the Department of Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation. Let me also convey one greetings from His Excellency, Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, who is equally seized with the socio-economic development for the Africa we want through our long-term Agenda 2063, which cannot be fully realized without vibrant, strong, and sustainable science, technology, and innovation capacities and platforms that empower the scientific communities to unlock potential solutions that address our development challenges in health and diseases, beneficiation of our natural resources, such as minerals, agricultural products, climate change, and the environment, among others. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union Commission deeply believes that investment in STI capacities is critical for our research and innovation ecosystems. Our continental STI strategy that we commonly call the Science, Technology, Innovation Strategy for Africa 2024 identifies 4 pillars for building science capacities at the national, regional, and continental levels. These pillars identify with AfLS conference thematics. I will emphasize on the first and second pillar. Pillar 1 focuses on building, improving scientific infrastructures. We need centers of excellences for research and innovation, laboratories and world-class STI infrastructure and facilities for conducting research, teaching and learning, engineering, testing, prototyping, and clinical trials among these for technology, diffusion, transfer, and uptake. We should improve connectivity, ICTs, and digital infrastructure that enable collaborative research, access to data, and co-creation of knowledge. Pillar 2 focuses on improving technical competencies through education underpinned by the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016-2025. Africa has to spare no effort on its human capital development with special focus on women and youth. Africa's higher education must be attractive and research intensive, thus contributing to the acceleration of our continent's transition into a knowledge-based and innovation-led economies. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a synchrotron is one of such enabling infrastructures, a very powerful scientific tool with potential applications across many development sectors, health, industry, material sciences. The initiative on African synchrotron has already reached the STCESC during its session of October 2017 held in Egypt, Cairo. In their decision, the ministers called the member initiative. The ministers are therefore seized on the matter, and I'm very happy that at least 3 ministers joined this conference and spoke at this high-level discussion. And I also use this opportunity to call upon all the relevant stakeholders, including the African Academy of Science, to work together to realize this important initiative for the continent. The African Union Commission will continue playing its role to ensure political support for the creation of such critical continental research infrastructures and inclusive participation of all our continental institutions and our development partners. As you have rightly said, sir, the discussion so far has been very interesting. And I believe that the outcome of this conference is very important, and we look forward to sharing it with all member states during the next STCESC, that is the the Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science, Technology, Innovation, that will take place mid-December this year. So we want to thank you and we want to congratulate you for setting the tone. And we wish all stakeholders the very best. Since we are not going to meet before the end of this year, I take this opportunity to say Merry Christmas and the super abundant prosperous 2022, sir. Thank you.
Excellency, thank you very much for those encouraging words. Very encouraging to learn that African ministers and the Commission are already seized by this project to locate a synchrotron light source on the African continent. I can promise you that we shall work together with the African Academy of Sciences to make sure that Africa speaks in one voice when it comes to this particular initiative. Rest assured that this global community, because the community in this meeting, Her Excellency, is African, but also we have partners of Africa in North America, in Europe, who are also wanting to be part of this project as we locate a versatile facility that you've described, that's a synchrotron light source. And this community will be very eager to work with you and your team in the Commission to realize this very important project. Thank you, Her Excellency. And we're glad that the session dragged on a little longer than it was actually scheduled to, and that we're actually able to accommodate you to come and join. I know that Simon and others were going to be crucifying me for having let the session run so long. If only they knew that I was waiting for you to join before I could close the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations.
And thanks, everybody. I'm delighted to see that people stayed on this call, even though it went way beyond time. And it just signifies the degree and level of interest that we all have in realizing this very important project. With those words, I say good night to you and those who celebrate Christmas. As the commissioner said, have a good Christmas. Those who do not, have a good rest of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So